Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Mouth of the Tyne, live with Roberto Rojas. Roberto, thank you very much for joining us all tonight. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Ben. I'm good. My pleasure to be here. Obviously, speaking on the day that the World Cup happens, and then we're not doing any World Cup chat today. I think we're going to settle into what's been going on in the Northeast, and I'm very excited to be on here, man. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great. For those of you that aren't familiar with Roberto, he is currently working for DAZN. Is that right, Roberto?
Yep.
And you've got a whole host of experience with other, television and broadcast companies. But that's your current kind of situation. But what I want to talk about first, to kind of give the fans at home an introduction into how Newcastle fans got to know you, was way back in 2019 with the transfer of our very own Miguel Almiron. You kind of came to prominence with a lot of us on NUFC Twitter and other kind of forms of social media. You really helped us understand who Miggy Almiron was, what his qualities were, what he was going to bring to Newcastle United, and just a whole host of other things about him. Like you knew about his personality, you knew his family setup. You had such a vast knowledge of Miggy. It was just a pleasure to be able to interact with you on NUFC Twitter. What was that like back then? So we're going back maybe four years. Is that right? I'm trying to do my maths here. Something like that. About 3 or 4 years, as long as Miggy's been at NUFC. What was it like when NUFC fans started interacting with yourself? Was it overwhelming? Was it fun? What was the initial kind of experience of it back then? How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a lot of things going on. I mean, I think, it was, in the age of, your Fabrizio Romanos and your David Ornstein's always coming out to break news. I think certainly for myself, I kind of felt like, in a way, what they were doing is something that I did. And I think it's, the joys of Twitter or bad things as well is it's always a mixed bag. You don't know what to expect. Like, yeah, there's always people out there that are going to be envious or jealous, but I always saw myself as just being myself. And I think, for me personally, like, having reported on Miggy for, a while now, like almost 5 years, following his career, among other Paraguayan players, of course, because that's obviously where my background comes from. But I think when it came to this, it kind of helped me enter like have a new audience, obviously meet a fan base that I think was, for the most part, very kind, like very welcoming. I mean, yeah, it took a while for Miggy to get into the form that he's in right now, and it's great to see that. But I think initially, I think it was just, for me, it was something brand new, and I was thankful enough to always stuck to my roots, stuck to the person that I am, and just use that to characterize what kind of work that I continue doing. And I'm still like this to this day. Like, yeah, obviously I've kind of changed like any other human being would, but for me, when it came to like just dealing with Newcastle or Almiron or whatever, it was fun. Actually, it was really fun, and the fact that I got the chance to go to St. James's Park, to go to Newcastle, and to check out how it was like there, I think kind of was also very eye-opening for me.
Yeah. We'll touch on Miggy himself in a minute and the great form he's been in. But seeing as though you made the point there that you had been to Newcastle, was that before the takeover or was it after?
No, it was before. It was April 2019. It was Easter weekend. It was a game between Newcastle and Southampton. Jose Perez scored a hat trick that day.
I remember it.
Yeah. So no, it was really nice. Like, everyone was so welcoming and so kind. Like, I had so many great people around me as well that was able to guide me to meet some people that I knew there, and to this day that I still keep in contact with after all these years.
Yeah.
It was fun, and this isn't an endorsement or anything, but it's like, I'd love to go back. It was such an amazing city, and for me, like, to check out like new places anywhere in the world. I think going to Newcastle certainly did that for me, and it was really fun.
Yeah, no, that's great, and we would love to have you back, Roberto. You'll always be welcome in the Toon anytime you want. Just gotta get those flights sorted, and I'm sure we'll be able to find you some accommodation somewhere in the Toon. Somebody will put you up on their couch or something like that. Yeah, man. Yeah. So let's touch on kind of how Newcastle United are now being perceived in the US. Let's say post takeover. Has the perceptions changed of Newcastle United amongst Premier League fans in general? Let's say in the US, have you noticed a kind of shift in people are standing up and taking notice of us now? Have we got a few more fans maybe that we didn't have before?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a big club. Let's not just beat around the bush. The Newcastle have always been historically a giant in English football. I think we know that. I mean, yeah, it was obviously it got onto some hard times for some years in the past. Even pre-takeover, but it was always still a big club. And I think the good thing about the Premier League here in the States is like it's gotten so popular. I'm 24, and so I've seen the rise of the Premier League since I was like a kid, basically.
Yeah.
How it's getting even better. So yeah, I mean, I think now, especially the way that they're performing, like of course they're getting much more attention the way that they've been playing. I think yeah, obviously it's the main storylines that you're getting these days. It's like who's gonna stop Newcastle? Who's gonna is this a team that could surprise people? And I think it's normal. It happens to all the teams, but I think yeah, I think they're definitely getting a bit more attention. Whether it's positive or negative, I don't know, but for the most part, I think just from a football perspective, it's been mainly positive because of the way that they play, the players that they have there, Eddie Howe, how much respect he
Yeah.
has, and yeah, obviously it's not big in comparison to any of the Manchester clubs or teams in London, Liverpool, whatever. But I think there is still that attention that is given to them, especially because we've had players who have played in MLS or have had Americans there, or just big players that people know, and especially with like accessibility these days, where any fan in the world or in the United States in this case can go and access a game and get the information that is needed. And I think that's only helped rise the attention and of course the importance of what Newcastle is to this country.
Yeah. So just touching on kind of expanding on that point there, and this is just something I want your personal opinion on. It doesn't have to be a kind of factual based thing, but do you think Newcastle United has the potential to supersede these clubs, what you listed there, the Man Cities, the Chelseas, the Man Uniteds, in time? We're not expecting this to happen overnight, but this kind of wealth, which will probably equal a certain level of high success, you would think, that a lot of these clubs, kind of like Chelsea and Man United and Man City, would be overtaken in popularity, let's say, by Newcastle United in the coming months and maybe years. Do you think this will happen? Do you think it'll be a slow process, or do you think maybe this will be quite a sharp rise in popularity and hopefully overtaking these clubs? What's your views on that?
I think from that end, I think in a world where you have so many fans that are fans of players of certain like managers or just teams, I think it will go into that. Yeah, of course they have the potential. I mean, now they have the resources to be able to do that in comparison to what City are doing, to do what Chelsea are doing, and many other clubs across England. And they definitely do that. I think the good thing about them is that there is that kind of ambition there. I could see it. I mean, yeah, I think I agree. It's not going to be something that is going to be done overnight. I don't think it's pleasable. It's definitely not something that I think is possible for now, at least, because I think there's just like so many restrictions these days, and like the way that the money that they do have is being used is not on getting the fancy players of the world. It's to help create an environment and a landscape that helps them succeed. I think it's like investing in infrastructure and just helping the well-being of the players, the managers, the staff that work at the club, those kind of things, and then obviously reaching out to the community. And I think that's something that I think Newcastle have always, for me, I've always adored about them is the way that they give back to the community. They've always felt like a club of the people, and that's something that I really appreciate. So I think as long as they stick to those virtues, I think yeah, it's definitely possible. Of course, yeah. I mean, if they win trophies, yeah, obviously people are going to get on the bandwagon and try to be part of the hype, really. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's normal. That happens to
it
City,
does.
happen to Liverpool, Chelsea. Like
Yeah,
it'll happen.
yeah,
So I think once something like that is going to happen, if it does, of course, we're not future, we're not psychic, so we don't
yeah,
know what could happen. But I would assume that if Newcastle have the plan correctly of what they want to do and how they're going to achieve that success, you would think that they would be able to do that in such a short time. How much time, I don't know, but I think if they can continue with that plan, especially with the way that they're doing right now, I think even though they haven't spent a lot in comparison to what they have, the fact that they've been able to get the success at the time being, I think shows that, if they can do that with little, imagine what they can do with more.
yeah. That's it. That ultimately is the kind of question that we're talking about a lot at the minute, and kind of how far we've come in such a short space of time. It does appear that with a little bit more time and maybe a lot more money, this could be something really special going on here. Especially as you say, with such a good manager in Eddie Howe. I mean, for me, Howe is proven to be one of the best young, not just English managers in the game, but just the best young manager, in kind of maybe Europe or possibly even the world at the minute for his age and the experience that he already has already. I do feel he's got the X factor about him, and he just seems to get the club. For us, it's great. He gets the club, he gets the area, but in the football sense, the man really does understand football. It's like this guy. It's like we used to think Rafa was a kind of legend, a god up here, and because he had such a tactical brain. We love that about Rafa. Eddie Howe has taken that to a new level. This I don't know if you had a chance to see the high performance podcast that he did with Jake Humphrey last week, but wow, that is an incredible watch, and it really does give you an insight into the mind of Eddie Howe, and the in-depth kind of knowledge that he has of the game. I just wow, mind blown. So yeah, I just feel like we could be on the verge of something really big. But yeah, so let's move on to the man of the moment. I don't want to say this season because he's been so good in 2022. On whole, he's been so good, like pretty much the entire year. But Miggy Almiron. Now, I just checked my stats there before I came on here. I'm going to count friendlies, and I'm going to count Paraguay goals too. But I have him down as 16 goals in all competitions in 2022. I don't know if that's a career best so far, but it must be up there. And it just shows you that, this is something that started kind of in January. He obviously, he took on the challenge. That's the biggest thing that I can say about Miggy, and the fact that he has a coach who is actually decent these days. But we'll touch on Steve Bruce in a second. But yeah, so like 16 goals for a guy that isn't really renowned for, kind of prolific goal scoring. He scored only one at the back end of last season, and it was a great goal against Crystal Palace. But then he went away in the summer with Paraguay, and he scored a couple of good goals. I think he scored a brace at one point with them. And then kind of the Newcastle United preseason friendlies, he was on fire in them. He was banging in the goals. And yeah, so I have him down at 16 goals, and I'm not sure how many assists, but what a fantastic return in 2022. The question I want to ask you, Roberto, has Miggy always been this good? And has he been underused and maybe undervalued, underappreciated? Or is this something new? Is this a kind of new Miggy 2.0, what we're seeing? Or has he always had this talent, in Atlanta? You'll have watched them closer than I did over there. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's very interesting to now think of it now when there's no Premier League, and obviously we're not at the World Cup, so we don't know what's going on in terms of like games happening at the same time. But I think for me, yeah, I certainly didn't expect him to get into this kind of form. I mean, yeah, certainly when you look at the position that he plays in or has historically played in, you would think this guy's he's not a goal scorer. He's never been a goal scorer, but he's always tried to be one. And he has. He did it at Atlanta. He did it at Lanús. He did it at Cedro when he first started. I mean, he wasn't like the guy that bangs in like 10, 20 goals or anything like that, but he would get goals. He would get goals as an attacking player. So I think, I think there was always that potential. I think certainly, I think one of the main issues, and it was a risk at the time for a player from MLS to go to the Premier League, especially one that was coming from a different country, a different league, a different mindset, a different idea. It's way different to do that. Now, of course, I think when you make the change from Gerardo Martino, the manager of Atlanta United, to Rafa Benitez, I mean, yeah, it's a big change, and the expectation is big, even if it is Newcastle. To go play in probably the best league in the world, maybe the best, I would say. It's a big challenge. So I think I never thought that he couldn't do it. I always thought he did. I mean, yeah, of course, there were games where you think to yourself, like, okay, is he ever going to get good? Is this going to be something where he's going to be labeled as a bust or something? Because for the money that he's got and the return that Newcastle are getting, it's not exactly in that comparison. But I think from what I've been able to see, I think obviously for me, the biggest factor has always been, and I've said this in numerous podcasts and to friends and family and people who have asked me about him, I think it's the coaching. And I say that not just because of him improving, but look at how the other team is improving. Look at how players like Joe Ellington. I mean, yes, of course. I think when you bring in players that are a bit more of your caliber and are a bit, of that style, like a Guimaraes, a Trippier, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you're gonna improve. Callum Wilson, Isak, all those kind of players. Yeah, you're gonna improve. But I think with Miguel and his kind of form, I think I see it in two ways. I think, yeah, the coaching definitely helped. I think it definitely helped him be a bit more motivated and play in a way that is obviously a bit more pragmatic, suiting to his style, not having to track all the way back as a defender or playing even as a holding midfielder at some points under Steve Bruce, but actually perform in the way that he does, as a winger, as an attacking player. Not a goal scorer, but certainly an influence right into the end of the pitch. And I think one thing that Eddie Howe had even said, he was, and I think that was really interesting what he said. He always said that, he wasn't fascinated by like the numbers that he would get, being the assist or the goals. It was more about the contribution and how he's able to help the team in winning games and that on. So I think that's one part. I think the second part as well is I think he knew that his spot was up for debate, and he knew that his spot wasn't going to be secure. I think he knew that there were going to be players out there, be it from transfer interest or just players that they have at the disposal, that it was going to be up for debate. It was always going to be a competition. So he used that kind of thing as motivation. And so I think, where everyone is kind of in this process of players in Newcastle thinking, are we going to be part of this new project, or are we just there to make the numbers up and before we get in dispense? So I think I see that in two ways. I mean, yeah, you can go and say, oh, the running joke saying it was Jack Grealish that motivated him a lot, which to an extent I think is true. I mean, I've never seen him, obviously publicly he's never slated him or never said anything bad, but I think if you are a human being and you see a Premier League footballer, one of your colleagues, you would say, in this kind of work, say something like that, you think, what the hell? Like, I want to, I don't want to do that wrong. You wouldn't say it publicly, but deep down, you're like, yeah, of course we want to do that. So I see that as those kind of combinations. I think it's down to good coaching, the motivation from external factors, be it from Grealish, or internal factors where the club is changing, and so he wants to feel like he needs to be part of that. So he needed to, step it up a notch.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you've just said there. I think, from my opinion, I didn't know, and I'll say we didn't know because, I think a lot of the fans didn't really know too much about Miggy before he came here. But once we knew we were linked and we started researching him, I think the general opinion was, wow, this guy looks like a real talent. He just looked so quick. And he's still very rapid. I don't think he's lost much pace in his kind of, as he approaches 30. He's still, the pace is still there. But he just looked so nippy, so, quite intelligent player. Sometimes, you would see he was maybe running down a blind channel and kind of, had to double back on himself. But in general, he looked very much a live wire. And the clips that we saw whilst he was in the MLS, when I saw them, I thought, wow, I really want this guy to sign for us. And I didn't know if Ashley was going to stump up the money for him, because under Ashley, this was like an incredible amount of money, like under the the stingiest owner in the Premier League. But yeah, when he first came under Rafa, although he didn't score many goals in the second half of that season, I thought he looked excellent. He looked dangerous, and it was the classic link-up play with Rondon, Perez, and Miggy, and they just looked like a trio that had played together for years. Rondon is the target man, supported by Perez and Miggy on the flanks. Two very different players. Perez not quite as fast as Miggy, with maybe a few more tricks in his sleeve, but it just worked. Rondon was feeding them. Perez was scoring goals. Miggy was unlucky not to score. He hit the post and a couple of times, and it just seemed like he was a great player and he had a lot of potential. And I think everyone was looking forward to the next season. Obviously, Rafa left. Steve Bruce came in, and as you say, at one stage, he did appear to be playing him almost as a defensive midfielder. He wasn't sitting in the holding role as such, but he was expected to go that way, backwards, more than he was supposed to go forwards. And it just, I honestly believe it completely killed Miggy as a footballer, as it did with lots of other players, such as Joe Linton, who came in at a bad time and was played, let's say, out of position and isolated. Fabian Schär, who under Rafa was one of our best players, ball-playing centre-back, and now has gone back to that Schär form under Howe. These are players what are classic examples of a manager coming in and their form takes a nosedive, thanks to the cluelessness of a manager that just has very little tactical knowledge of the game, which is so strange for someone that's been involved with it for such a long time. Bruce was a great player, although he never got the caps some might say he kind of deserved at international level for England. But, for club, he was great. But, apart from a couple of early years as a manager, when he had a little bit of success, at Birmingham and other places like this, it's like, he hasn't really done anything in his entire career that warranted getting into that position. And ultimately, our players were the ones that suffered. And it was such a horrible thing to watch. These good players that showed so much potential just suddenly nosediving. It was a real hard watch. And as you say, that is that something you kind of noticed under Bruce, just to highlight that again?
Yeah, I did. I really did. I think that was something that, it wasn't just him, but also a lot of players. And I think, when you go from in a system that doesn't suit you, like, yeah, obviously you're gonna suffer. Like, yes, you have to adapt. And Miggy tried to, he got the goals. He was able to do something. He wasn't like one that was just there. And he regressed in the way that maybe if it was under Rafa, it would have changed differently. But I agree. I think the way that he was set up, I think the way that the team played, it wasn't working. And I mean, sometimes you do have to also place the blame on the player, because there's only so much the coach can do to tell him that, hey, you got to do this and that to help the team. But, at the same time, you also have to take the courage and be able to accept responsibility from there. But I think from the most part, I think when you're not in a system and an idea that works best for you, how are you going to succeed? And so I think that's something that Eddie Howe has tried to improve and is doing that. So, and hopefully, like, come the beginning of the Premier League and the rest of the season, that, he's able to continue that kind of form to help Newcastle achieve what they need to achieve at the end of the season.
Yeah, great words, Roberto. Right, so let's have a look at some comments here. Don Kingsley, would you take 25 to 30 million for Almiron? I personally wouldn't. Not now. Not particularly because that's not a great amount of money for him. It probably is. But I just love Miggy. And I think all the Newcastle United fans just love this guy. We always loved him. We loved his infectious smile. We loved his work rate. But it was also frustrating for 2 years under Bruce, to see him struggling. And I guess that's the nature of football. Players do get pounced on by fans when things aren't going well. Especially, I always look at it like this. Players can get away with being out of form if the team itself and the club itself is doing good things. Nobody's bothered about a player that's not in form when, you're sitting fourth or third or, whatever. But if the team is struggling and the owner doesn't care, then, fans do pick up on players' form, and, it can become a bit of a pile-on. So, but to answer the question, no, at the minute, I wouldn't take 25 to 30 million for Miggy, because I love the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Roberto, if you were a Tyne fan, which you might be, by now, I'm sure you've got a love for us, would you sell Miggy, or would you keep him as part of this new era of Newcastle United?
I think the way that he's been playing, I think it would be unwise to sell him now. I mean, yeah, you could try and get a bit more money and see what you can do and be able to get someone that it probably is a bit younger, maybe a bit more better, technical, is more reliable. But I think right now, in the way that they're playing, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I think just the way that he's been playing is something that is something that he's worth. And yeah, I mean, and at the same time, I mean, yeah, I think maybe the 25-30 is maybe a bit much for now. I'm not saying that because, I think he's kind of revolved back, because I think his stock did fall for some time. And so I think he's going back to the form that he was at when he was at Atlanta. But having said that, I think if he continues the form that he's in, who knows how much he can be worth. I think he could definitely be worth a bit more. And you know how it is these days with like Premier League prices and, overvaluating players. I think if he has the potential to raise his stock a bit more, then I'd do it. But especially, I think, and no, this isn't me saying like, oh, he's gonna renew his contract, because I know there's been rumors about that, and for me, I don't know if that's gonna happen as of yet. I think that's probably gonna be if it's a gun to my head kind of decision, I'd say that's probably gonna be until the end of the season. I think that's where we'll see what happens. But for the time being, if Eddie Howe likes him, if the board likes him, if the teammates like him, what I think is very important, no reason for him to be sold.
Yeah, very true. Great comment from Kenny here. Miggy is a slow burner and just finding his way, and is now classed as one of the top 5 in the league at this minute. His price, should we sell him, will be a lot more than people might think. Yeah, I think you might have a point there, Kenny. Like I say, I don't think he will go, but in theory, I think you could be looking at something like, I think if he was sold now, you probably could get 30, 35 million for him, maybe. A 28-year-old with the form he's in. Yeah, if he hadn't shown this form, probably wouldn't be anywhere near that. But I do feel like, you could maybe get somewhere like that. Maybe I'm being a bit, I don't know, maybe I've got the black and white glasses on there and just kind of maybe Miggy's not quite worth that much. But yeah, I think that's a valid point. Let's have a look at this one. Do you think Miggy, this is from George H., do you think Miggy can keep up his current form throughout the season? This was actually one of my questions that I had on my little list here to ask you, Roberto, and we touched on it slightly before there, but, just a little bit more in depth. Do you think this is possible for Miggy to keep this purple? Is it a purple patch, or is it something that is Miggy 2.0? Is this who he is now?
Honestly,
what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I never expected him to go in the streak that he got in. So that's that. So me making any predictions would be a bit of formality. But putting me on the spot, I'd say, yeah, why not? Because I think, obviously for him, I think the good thing is that, Paraguay are now at the World Cup, and he's actually recovering from some fitness issues right now. So he's kind of injured, picked up a knock at Newcastle, I think in the second to last game, or the game against Chelsea. But even then, you still get a month off, because the World Cup doesn't end until, late December.
Yeah.
And so you get them all rested up in what is a brutal league where so many games are happening at the same time. Same thing with someone, I kind of make this argument with like Erling Haaland, for example. Like, he's been scoring so many goals, but he hasn't been rested properly. You get him rested properly for a good month, and you're going to be probably looking at a way different player. So I'd say, yeah, I think so. I think if he hits double digits, which, he's on 8, so he needs 2 more to do that the entire season, and I think he'll do that. But I think if he reaches for me, I think if he hits 15 goals, I think that would be a very, very good season. That'd be his best individual season of his career, especially playing in Newcastle. I think if he hits double figures in general, I think people would be very happy. I'd like to get him some more assists. I think that's something that I've always wanted him to do. I always wanted him to be more creative. Like, yeah, goals are great, and anyone would like to do that. But I do want to see him a bit more as a creator and be able to pick out passes, to play through balls, to have that connection with Bruno Guimaraes, and all those type of players. And I think then you can get more of an all around complete player in the logic that I'm stating at.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, you were saying we could maybe give him a rest over the next month. Have you heard anything about his injury update that's kind of happening at the minute? Is it just a more fatigue related, or is there something we should be worried about?
Yeah. So I was actually at the Paraguay-Colombia game yesterday. They lost 2-0 in Miami. Miggy didn't travel with the squad because he had carried a knock. And I asked Guillermo Barros-Queloto, the manager, about that, and he said, yeah, it was just a knock. He had picked it up from Newcastle overall. And I think after we assessed it, because he played only the first half against Peru in their friendly a couple days ago, and he didn't play the second half. So it was that case of just like making sure that he was fine. But from what I hear and from what he said, I think by the time the Premier League starts, he'll be in good condition. So like I said, I think it's just a case of fatigue, some rest, and I think he'll be in good shape when
starts. That's great. That's great to hear, because we hadn't really had any updates at all over this side. I've tried searching on Twitter. I really couldn't find much information. So that's great to know. But yeah, we'll just try and get through a couple more of these comments here. Perez went for a lot more money years ago. Just rolling it back to the previous question. Yeah, good point, Kenny, that, we sold Perez for, I think that was 35-40 million or something, wasn't it, to Leicester? But yeah, so I know what you're saying. Yeah, if the form is there, why not? Charlie Brunton, when you have Trippier and Miggy together, they're one of the best duos in the league. Yeah, you touched on there the link-up play between Bruno and Miggy. We've talked about it on the post-match reviews that we do, Roberto, that there's like a little quadrant of players, a quartet, if you will, and it includes Miggy, Bruno, Sean Longstaff, and Kieran Trippier down the right-hand side. And these four guys have incredible link-up play, and it's improving game on game. And it really, most of our attacks do come down the right-hand side. But it just doesn't seem like that teams can do anything to stop it. Like, it's kind of almost predictable. We won't dwell on it too much tonight, because we've touched on it a lot in previous shows. But I just feel like, it must be good. What I'm trying to say is Miggy must have a real talent about him if teams can see this coming and that they still can't stop it. Miggy's he has been unstoppable this season, but it is, you can't just do it by yourself. And I think the form of Bruno, Trippier, and Sean Longstaff down that right has really enabled Miggy to he's almost got this free role. But people are finding him with these great through balls. Trippier has had, like Charlie says there, great link-up play with him. Bruno does these delicious balls over the top. Miggy will lay it off. Bruno's finding him straight away. Teams can't stop him. But it is down to Miggy, but it's also his colleagues such as Trippier, Longstaff, and Bruno. These guys are really helping him. He's got great link-up play with these guys. Kenny again, Miggy is improving every match. Yep. Kenny replying to Charlie here. Great pairing. Guess that's with Trippier, like we've just said there. Very, very good partnership. Here's a comment from Chris. With the work rate Eddie expects from the players, can Miggy stay fit for the whole season? Yeah, well, we've kind of touched on that already there. But do you think that, like you say, Roberto, the rest will do him well and he'll be able to rest and recuperate? That's what we're going with on this one, you think?
Well, one of the good things I think that Miggy has had, he hasn't had any long-term injuries. I mean, if he's had, I think he had one bad one where he was out of the season, but that was like a couple weeks before. It was I think 3 more weeks until the end of the season. So it wasn't, and I think Newcastle already secured a promotion. They were good. So I don't think I feel like for him, I've always seen him as someone that's reliable. And that was always one of my fears when he came to England. It's you see him, he's skinny. He's not exactly the strongest guy in the world.
Very slight of build, isn't he?
Yeah. That's it. It's so I always wondered how he would deal with the physicality of the Premier League, because I feel like that's always been kind of an issue for a lot of Paraguayans who go here, that they can't handle the intensity and the and the physicality of the Premier League. But he seemed to adapt well. You see that he built some muscle. Yeah, it's not significant, but you do
Yeah.
see it. So
He is strong for
he is. He is.
for
Yeah.
little guys. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, and he's beaten a lot of defenders, some big defenders as well. So he's definitely improved. And so, and then, and the work rate that he has, like it's, you see it week in and week out. And that's something that people have always, um, acclaimed him for. That was
Yeah,
always something that people praised him for, is his
it's
work rate.
incredible.
Exactly. So I think, yeah, of course he can. I think he could definitely stay fit for a season. I think if he continues to play the way that he does and is having his routine, and this isn't someone that has had, like I said before, a long history with injuries, and if he's had, is probably very rare that he was out for like many months. But so yeah, he's definitely someone that is reliable, and I think if Eddie Howe is able to utilize him and utilize his plan in terms of work rate, I think, yeah, I think he can stay fit for the whole season. I mean, yeah, it'll definitely be like a different mindset and different type of training, which makes sense because that now they're in this ambition kind of mode. So I think, yeah, I think he can definitely adapt to it, just like he's done over the last 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. We'll just have a quick look at these comments, and then I kind of want to get your overview on the Newcastle United season so far. But yeah, we'll just fly through these. Charlie again. Cher has been one of our best players for years. Yeah, he has, but he was very very poor under Bruce. We can't get away from that, and thank God Eddie came in and salvaged his career. Kenny here. Rafa still loves the tune. Another one from Charlie. Lascelles gets so much hate. It's unfair. Eddie Howe said he's a great character and shows real captaincy and works hard. He does, but as with a lot of limited players will always take the flack of the fans. They will always be criticised, especially when the team improves around them, and it's highlighted even more so, what they're lacking. And yeah, Lascelles is a good leader, Charlie, but, when you're comparing to Cher and Byrne, and especially Botman, I mean, there's only one way this team's going with players like that standard in this side. And unfortunately, Lascelles probably won't be around in this team for much longer. But, he is a good guy. And I loved his captaincy skills in the last game against Chelsea. I don't know if you saw this, Roberto, the Newcastle United Chelsea match, but Lascelles was very much kind of acting as cheerleader from the sidelines, and he was standing very close to Cucurella, stopping him from taking the throw. Yeah, it was great. It was great to see when all the mayhem was kicking off at the end of the game. Yeah, this is what you want from your captain, really, even if he's not on the pitch. And yeah, they all improve each other. So yeah, some great comments there, guys. Yeah, so Roberto, let's move on to Newcastle United in general on a whole this season. What's been your views from across the pond? Obviously, you've touched on what kind of fans are thinking of us. How have you as a journalist? What's your take been? Have you been impressed? I know we have, and we've been very much surprised. We're quite a humble bunch, and we really don't ask for a lot. So we're still in dreamland from the fact that the takeover went through. This is something. I'm 35 now, and Ashley had owned the club since I was 20 years old. So a couple of years younger than you are now. And, my entire 20s and into my mid-30s was spent in misery, as a football fan. We tried to keep the fires burning, and luckily we got there in the end. So we've really enjoyed it. But again, it's been a big surprise to us this season, despite all the factors of money, top signings, and Eddie Howe. We honestly didn't think that we would click like we have and take our game to the next level. Just as an outsider, what's your take on things?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what I saw towards the tail end of last season, especially the way that they played, I think there was something that I thought, okay, if they're able to get a few pieces in, I think they can do something. I had said previously, right before the start of the Premier League season, that I think if they were able to finish in 6th or 7th, I think I put 7th in the prediction, they were to finish in 7th into that Europa Conference League, I think for the most part, people would be absolutely happy if that happened. Obviously, they've exceeded that expectation now, being in 3rd. But I've just been impressed. I think just the way that they've been playing, I think one of the things that I've always enjoyed, and this is not just in Newcastle, any team really, I like when teams are fearless. I think, even if they are the underdog sometimes, I think they want to take control of the game. And we saw that. We saw that in the games against City. We saw that against Chelsea just now. Yeah, it didn't work well against Liverpool, but Liverpool are a good side who,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're probably going to beat you. And but still, you saw that they didn't even give up. This wasn't a blowout. Like they really had I think they scored first as well, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. So
yeah, we did, and we probably
exactly.
should have won,
Yeah,
or
exactly. So
at
it's
least getting a point. That's it.
exactly. So from there, I see a team that doesn't give up, that is very valiant in the way that they play, and I think it's something that Eddie Howe has kind of, he's kind of bringing that philosophy to these players that, this is, we want to shake up things. We want to, I wouldn't say ruin the party, but like a Leicester or whatever, but certainly try to say, hey, we're here. We're not the Newcastle of beforehand where, everyone thought it would be an easy 3 points or we're like fighting in relegation. Like, no, we want to show that, hey, we can take control of this game. And I think that just the way they've been playing has allowed them to be on that high. And I think, with certain players, like I said, like Miggy obviously getting the applause with the goal, but Wilson, Joelinton transforming himself from a striker that didn't get goals all the way as a midfielder. Bruno Guimaraes, picking up passes and being kind of the conductor in that midfield, helping players in the defense, like the likes of Byrne and Target and Trippier, even Nick Pope in goal as well. I think the team has just been transformed in a way that, has allowed them to play very fearless. And, it's going to be interesting to see if they keep on this. Like I said, I think for you and for a lot of Newcastle fans, even if they were to finish in 7th, which is possible, I'm not saying, I'm not here to say that, yeah, Newcastle can sign, like, they can go and finish 7th, finish 3rd, even win it. Anything can happen. That's the beauty of football. But I think if they're still in that position where they're still battling out in top 4, maybe they drop off, because it could happen. It could happen. I think it will. I think it will happen, because some teams are just those that have better depth and are a bit more quality. They're going to find a way to
and
get
the experience too, isn't it, in the last stages of the season? Yeah. I agree. But yeah.
Yeah, no. So, and I think from there on, I think if they're still in that position, then yeah, I think whatever they can achieve, I think I still stick to the Europe prediction. So I think if they can continue this form, who knows what could happen at this point? Just like Miggy, like I didn't expect him to be in this kind of goal scoring form, and I think for you guys, for a lot of fans, I didn't think they would expect. I think a lot of them expect him to be right there in 3rd, and not just in the top 4 race.
Yeah,
theoretically a Premier League race as well.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I'm just sitting here smiling. Like, I've only started these shows up in the last couple of months, and we've had some great guests on, but every week the vibe of the show just gets more and more positive. So we've gone from like September, oh yeah, wow, it's a great era of Newcastle United, and we've gone into October of actually this is a great start to the season, and in November it's like, yeah, we're in a title race. So it's like, this is really, crazy times as a fan base, and I just love doing these shows and getting, insight from experts. And I'll call you an expert because, you've got a vast array of knowledge on football from all countries. And it's great to see, to get these opinions from people that matter. I think you're a great journalist, and, I've followed you a lot over the past few years. But yeah, it's really nice to hear people who know what they are talking about actually, say positive things about Newcastle United for a change. It's just so refreshing. Just makes me smile. Like, as you were talking there and you were rhyming off the players in the squad, and I was just like, yeah, great player. It's like, I'm so happy. It's fantastic, man. But so I was going to put you on the spot and ask for a prediction. You've kind of skirted around it there, but if I could push you, do you think we, if you just had to give me one position between, let's say 3rd and 8th,
okay,
what would you do?
Ooh, okay. So I did another podcast where I was put on the spot there. Again, there has been no games happening yet, and no significant injuries as of yet. So, but, obviously this could either age well or age badly. Having said that, I think I'm going to change my prediction where I say they're going to finish in 7th, not in the Premier League title race. I don't think they're going to win it. I think they'll still fight for that top 4 spot.
Yeah.
But I think they'll stumble just a bit. I'd love to be proven wrong, of course, but I think they move up just to 6th. I think if they finish in 6th place at the end of the season in the Europa League, I think that would, well, depending on what happens in like FA Cups or whatever.
Yeah.
I think they can move up a tier in European competition.
Yeah. I would personally be happy with that. I would, I can't speak for the guys at home watching, but I would feel that most people would be happy with that and impressed if that was our final position of the season. Just to touch on Chris's comment here, he says, still remain over the moon with top 8 and a cup final. Don't dare to dream bigger. Now, I agree the cup final sounds great, Chris. It really does. Like, if we got a cup final, I probably would accept a top 8 finish. But let's just take the cup final out for a second, because that really is dreaming. As it stands, I would personally be quite, I don't want to sound, like as if we're ungrateful, but a top 8 finish, to me, after the season, what we've had so far, and we are pushing on through the season, we can't really say it's the early stages, because the next time we play again, I understand it's because of the World Cup, but it's going to be Boxing Day, New Year's Eve. If we're playing those positions and you're 3rd in the league, to finish 8th a few months later in May, and then probably miss out on European competition, probably wouldn't be enough to get Europa Conference. I think that would be a disappointment. I think players like Bruno, Trippier, Botman, these players that were sold a dream and have probably realised the dream quicker than the time frame they were given, are probably thinking, wow, this is really clicking. Things are going well. We can definitely achieve Champions League, Europa League, or, even Europa Conference would be a step on the ladder. But to not get any form of European football would you can't say a disaster, because it's a new era of Newcastle United. Everything's rosy, but it would be a disappointment, definitely. Do you think that, Roberto? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you agree if we kind of missed out on top, let's say European competition through our league position, would that be a slight disappointment from what you've seen from where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, I even think that even in the position that you're at, I mean, when you're in that position, like, yeah, obviously you want to get better at it, and you want to continue that kind of form, because you know how it is. People can dream. They're thinking, oh, we're getting so well. Why can't we strive for more? Why not? So I think if they fall out of those European spots, especially after the great start that they had, it would be disappointing. It definitely would. But I think in the position that they're at now, in the way that they're playing, assuming it all goes well, why not go for more? Why not? I mean, it's like, it's kind of like this high that you're at. You don't know when you're going to stop.
Yeah.
But why worry about that? Why worry about that when you're continuing to win in the way that you're playing? So
yeah. Let's see how things go. So just to wrap up, kind of, when I get guests on, Roberto, I like to find out a little bit about, the personal kind of side of football and things like that. Have you always been a football fan? Or probably growing up, you called it soccer, I'm guessing. Have you always been a soccer fan from a little early age? Did you always dream of becoming kind of involved in soccer media? Was that something you kind of dreamed as a little boy?
Well, I mean, when as a little boy, you always dreamed about playing, and obviously I did, but I wasn't good enough to go pro. Otherwise, I'd probably be in the World Cup right now.
Yeah.
But no, unfortunately, that didn't happen. But no, I was involved. I was always. I mean, I love sports in general. I've always enjoyed it. Like growing up here in Connecticut, I like basketball, baseball, NFL, those kind of things. But soccer, how we say here in the States, it came back from my parents. They're from Paraguay. That's the biggest sport in their country, and like many people who come from those kind of nations, who are like second generation, they're automatically going to probably be more connected to that sport. But that's always been my thing, and I always wanted to be involved some way. So I thought, I always like to talk. I've always been a big fan of like just media and just like involved and knowing what's going on in the world. I thought, you put 2 and 2 together and you think, wow, this could definitely be something that I can do with my life. And
it's worked out well. It's worked out well.
I'm grateful enough to do the things that I've done and the things I'm going to continue to do. So I'm just enjoying it as it goes.
I actually wish that I'd done something similar to yourself years ago. So this is something that it's too late to change it now. So maybe I'm trying to make up for past decisions that I didn't make well when I was a youngster by doing these shows and trying to get involved in that way. I'm not making any money from it yet, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Never know.
Yeah, we'll keep going. I do enjoy them, but I think if I could go back in time, I would honestly do something like kind of sports journalism and get into the kind of, that revenue, that avenue of kind of employment. It seems like such a great, kind of a joyous, job, just to be able to travel the world. You get sent to all these different places, and because obviously football is a global sport, so you're never consigned to just one little sport. It's like the world is your oyster. If you're in football, and we've seen this more and more with social media, we're getting like access into how journalists operate and how podcasters operate, and there's people traveling all around the world, doing a job that they love, which is for some basically a hobby. It's like it's like a paid hobby. But yeah, you've obviously worked really hard to get where you are. So I wish you all the best with your future career. But just to touch on before we leave, who are your teams? Don't think we've ever talked about this, but who, were you a kind of Atlanta fan because of Miggy, or was that just, explain who your favorite teams are in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an MLS team in general. I always I enjoy watching it, but I never felt connected to an entire team. Yes, I did feel a bit closer to Atlanta, especially when Miggy was there, because they kind of, in a similar way like Newcastle, they kind of opened the doors for me to be able to speak about them and to go on like podcasts or shows or whatever, and that kind of helped me raise my work in a better way.
Yeah,
but
your profile.
Yeah, and I like to follow Paraguayan players that are happening in the league and abroad as well. Like my team that I supported in Paraguay is called Cerro Porteño. That's the team that Miggy actually started his career. So
yeah, that's a great name. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have to do anything with Miggy, but just it was just because my parents support them.
Yeah.
They're season ticket holders, like that kind of thing. So it just came like that, and I've always enjoyed just watching, like even today, like the World Cup. Like obviously, I enjoy this now, and as we're talking, literally about like less than 24 hours before the U.S. play Wales at the start of the World Cup. So yeah, I'm always fascinated by that, and yeah, just follow those, like the big teams that are going on there. Yeah, when you're a kid, obviously you like certain players, like your Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, those kind of guys. But I think once you get older and you kind of know that this is kind of your career, you kind of step away a little bit, but you still have the passion for it. I mean, that doesn't go away. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's kind of been my connection with the sport.
Yeah. Just one quick question that popped in my head there before we call it a day. Have you ever met Miggy? Or yeah, you have.
Yeah, I have a few times. There's a photo of me. I've met him in his house in Asuncion one time. We went to a little story that we this is like after his first year at Atlanta United. I befriended some of his family members, and I tend to go to Paraguay every year, usually for the holidays. And so this one time I went there and I told him, hey, I'm going to Paraguay. You want to do something? And I was like, it was like Christmas Day or something. And so it was like, no, just come to our house. And I'm like, okay, cool. And like, I didn't expect Miggy to be there. I go in and there he is playing FIFA. And I just shook his hand. I was like, hey, what's up, man? How are you? And just really chill. Yeah. It was really cool. But
that's great. Did you exchange numbers, or was that a step too far?
No. That's a bit more. Well, it wouldn't have worked in hindsight, because he's in England now.
True.
US number.
He could have had a long distance, but
probably.
It's great. No, that's Roberto. That's a great story to finish off on, man. I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your. I was going to say night, but is it still afternoon there for you guys?
It's 4:30. The sun is setting. It's almost winter. I mean, there's barely any sun. So yeah, let's say nice and generous and say evening in this case.
Evening. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you tonight, Roberto. I'd love to have you on the show again. Maybe we'll do a show in a few months and we can have another look at Miggy's form and see if he has been maintaining it, and we'll see where Newcastle United finish. See if it's anywhere near the predictions that yourself and I have given. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. And I know you've done a lot of NUFC podcasts this week, so I appreciate you coming on. You're probably very tired from doing them all, but I really do appreciate the time. And yeah, it's been an absolute Pleasure. Really, really good, man. So yeah, we'll leave it there, guys. I'd just like to say for everybody watching at home, thanks for your support with the channel. It is a new channel. We are starting to grow. We've almost creeped up to 2,000 followers, which in the space of 3 months, I couldn't have hoped for anything more. Going to keep doing these shows, but we do really we really need your support. So we do need you to like and subscribe if you do enjoy the channel. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to bring you more shows like tonight with Roberto Rojas. And yeah, so we'll leave it there, guys. I really do appreciate you as always, Roberto. Thank you once again, one more time, my friend. Roberto Rojas has been a fantastic guest tonight. American, Paraguayan football expert. We've loved hearing your insight on Miggy and NUFC. And I've been Ben from Mouth of Tyne. So take care, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. All the best.